What is the ultimate penalty? Why is there an ultimate penalty? And how in the world do you know that there is an ultimate penalty at all? These are all good questions that the religious have no good answers to. We should only be concerned with the demonstrable facts, and I don't think the religious would know a demonstrable fact if it ran up and bit them. So here goes yet another example. This time out, we look at Cliffe Knechtle, and I'm probably saying that wrong, I'm sorry, but that really has nothing at all to do with the content of his message. He's out park preaching and telling people that they're all going to hell. Well, how the hell does he know any of that? This really becomes a matter of not allowing the religious to just run around with the goalposts and pushing them to answer direct questions about their faith. Because if you notice, they've got a goal in mind, and that goal is not rationally defensible. So let's go watch Cliffe fail.
Forgiveness always costs somebody. If you rip me off for $100, either I'm going to absorb that hit and forgive you, or I'm going to get $100 from you.
That's demonstrably not true. If I forgive someone for wronging me, where is that cost? Demonstrate it. Show that there is an actual cost associated. Of course, he won't because he can't. Being wronged might have a cost, but forgiveness is free. What he describes is not forgiveness. If I said being wrong cost you $100, if you simply shrug your shoulders and walk away, that's not forgiveness. That's just giving up on justice. The person has committed a crime and the law needs to be involved. After all is said and done, and you've been made whole again, then you can forgive the individual, and that costs you nothing. The justice system is still going to do their job, and the criminal is still going to go to jail, pay a fine, get the incident on their permanent record, or whatever it happens to be. If people don't learn a lesson, they're more likely to just do it again. That has nothing at all to do with you forgiving them for transgressing against you.
But if you forgive me, there's no cost to you forgiving me. I've done the damage if I took $100 from you. And if you forgive me, I come to you and say, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
I'll give you $200 back, and you sincerely forgive me. There's no cost for you forgiving me, but the penalty is on me because I did the dirty deed.
Right.
That's pretty much what I already said. Of course, I think Cliffe is going to come up with something off the wall in response because that's what religious apologists tend to do. But of course, we'll just have to watch and see. After all, we know from experience that the religious have an agenda. They have a conclusion that they must reach, and they really can't consider the good points of others because this isn't about reason, it's about rationalization. It doesn't matter where you start, there is a place where you must end up. So let's see how he gets back to his blind beliefs. This ought to be interesting.
No, I would disagree. I would say that if I steal $100 from you, I have hurt you.
No, not really. It may momentarily inconvenience me, but it's not going to actually hurt me. But you see that he's trying to twist the situation into something that he can use to get back on track. There's an agenda there. Again, even though the person he's arguing with said that you were made whole, even compensated for your momentary loss with even more money, that's not good enough for Cliffe. Now, it's all about feelings, because, feelings are all these people care about.
And I owe you. When you forgive, you're saying, you don't owe me. I am absorbing the hurt. I'm absorbing the hit.
So now, we're playing definitional games. Yeah, this is just dumb, sorry. It's really why I don't play these what-if games with people. Well, what about X? Okay, what about X? What difference does X actually make? Let's talk about reality, because both sides of any theoretical discussion can try to shift the goalposts in their favor, and that's ultimately pointless. I don't care about your theories, I care about your facts. Let's try to get to some.
So when God forgives us, it doesn't mean, oh, boys will be boys, girls will be girls. Let's act like it never happened.
Why not? Because this isn't really a situation where somebody mugged God in an alleyway and stole his lunch money. God created the situation knowing full well what would happen and could have easily altered the conditions to make it turn out the way that he wanted it to turn out. That's the one thing that the religious never really consider, isn't it? Ultimately, everything that happens is God's fault. If God wanted a world without sin, then God could have made a world without sin. Now, the religious try to dodge that simple fact by holding out free will, but that doesn't really fly. Free will is the ability to do anything within a range of possible alternatives. It isn't within a range of all alternatives. You don't lose your free will by being unable to flap your arms and fly away from a problem. That's not how free will works. If sin had never existed as a concept in the world, if God had never created the possibility of sin, then we'd all still have free will. We just couldn't possibly sin. So blame God. It's all his fault.
No, somebody has to take the hit, pay the debt. That is what Jesus Christ did on the cross.
If that ever happened, which we all know you have no evidence for. But you notice that he's running around with the goalposts and ignoring all possibilities but the one that he's pushing for. Because, as I've said before, he's got an agenda and he's got a conclusion that he desperately has to reach. Therefore, he can allow no nuance. It has to go his way or his theological points will go out the window. It's why the religious get so good at fast talk. They have to, otherwise they'll never be able to make the point that they want to make. It's why I don't allow them to just go gallivanting down the religious road unchallenged. I know what they're trying to do, and so do you. So let's stop them from just galloping away in a cloud of dust and expect them to actually back up each and every single one of their points. Because if we make them do that, that totally destroys apologetics.
He paid the debt, paid the penalty that we deserve for our wrongdoing.
And why is that? Because this goes right back to what I said about God being to blame. Who says that we deserve anything? Who says any of it is even wrong? I know Cliff would, but he'd have to demonstrate it objectively, and I don't think he's up to the task. This is why we don't let them go without challenging their preconceptions. I don't accept that being human makes me a miserable sinner. If you'd like to prove that I'm wrong, then by all means go ahead. But you'd have to do more than presenting the unjustified and unsupported claims in a book of primitive mythology. You'd actually have to show that any of it is true using objective and verifiable evidence. I do not believe you. You have not met the burden of proof. Get better.
Isn't the sinner paying the debt because he's the one who did the wrong? So that's on him. He has to live with what he did.
Good.
Right?
Yes, there are consequences. Correct.
Yes, and here's another question before we let Cliff go nuts again. Please demonstrate how any of this actually causes harm to God. It's really why the religious define God in human terms, so that they can make God look like a pathetic weakling. Oh no, my feelings have been hurt. Seriously, you're supposed to be an all-powerful deity, supposedly, as I said. Why are you so emotionally frail? Hell, why do you have emotions at all? Has anyone answered that one yet? It's just more evidence that God was made up by fallible human beings using fallible human characteristics to make God more relatable. We all remember the old rhyme, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." Then you get this magical man in the sky who's beyond all physical harm, but the second he doesn't get his own way, he throws a childish temper tantrum. What in the world is going on here?
But no, the ultimate penalty is hell for my sin.
Says who? Besides your silly book and your absurd beliefs, I mean. I'm not concerned with what your book says. I'm not concerned with what your faith says. I care what the facts say, and you don't seem to have any of those, do you? This ultimately just circles back to the undeniable fact that he wants something to be true, so he insists that it is without being able to demonstrate anything. The religious start with the unjustified conclusion that they've got to be right, and then when they go out and talk to people who don't share that predisposition, they just pretend that everybody believes the same thing and proceed on from there. Except I don't believe your faith-based nonsense. I expect you to justify your beliefs to me before I'm going to let you go on. We need to be on the same page before you get to go gallivanting off into your happy magical fantasy place. We're going to take this one step at a time, and the first step, as I've said previously in my 30-second debate tactic, is you have to prove that the God that you actually believe in, upon which every bit of your belief structure is based, you have to prove that your God is actually real. And if you can't do that, then you lose. I'm not going to assume for the sake of argument that you're right. Put up or shut up.
And Christ, when he died on the cross, took the hell that I deserve for my wrongdoing in his body so that I could be forgiven and go to heaven.
And why should I accept any of that? It's the whole Harry Potter thing. Harry Potter fights against Voldemort, so he doesn't come and destroy the Muggle world. Harry Potter takes all of the trouble upon himself to save us from being destroyed by the Dark Lord. Now, that's fine as part of a story, but nobody in their right mind should ever believe it in reality. To go from, here's a story, to, here's the truth, there's a lot of steps that you have to go through in the middle first, and the religious miss every single one of them. It's why I continuously point out that there's a difference between assuming the truth and proving the truth, and the religious never get beyond the first option. They assume that what they believe is true for emotional reasons. They can't prove it. They don't even try. They can't provide any evidence whatsoever to support it. They just have blind faith that whatever it is has to be true because it makes them feel good to think that it is. But so does everybody else. Every religion does the exact same thing. Every crazy philosophical, political, etc. agenda does the exact same thing. They all think that what they believe is true, whether they can prove it or not. But here's the thing. They can't all be right, but they sure as hell can all be wrong. And that's why we don't accept their faith as proof of their correctness. We expect evidence. We expect reason. It's why I ask so many questions, and I don't let the theists just go running down the path with the goalposts past all those spots where they'd actually have to stop and back up their crap. Because they can't back it up, and we all know it. It's why we need to be willing to stop off at the crazy people on the soapboxes and ask, how in the hell do you know that? Where did you get that information, and how have you intellectually and intelligently backed it up to know if any of it is actually true? And if they can't provide a convincing answer, then we need to be willing to set up our own soapbox right next to theirs so we can point out all of the failings in what they're saying. The world needs to be protected from these delusional shysters. There is one and only one standard, and they are not abiding by it. They need to be called out, and we need to be accountable for doing so. Your faith doesn't mean a damn thing. Only your demonstrable facts do. Please, try to find some. Otherwise, you're just embarrassing yourselves.
Boom, dicky, 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 bum.